So I'm Alicia Kennedy, I'm from Edible, and we're here to talk about how tech is changing how we drink. So today on our panel we have Matthew Spinozzi, head distiller for Matchbook Distilling Company in Greenport, New York, who holds a Master of Science in Brewing and Distilling. Prior to MDC, he was a production consultant and educator for the alcohol industry. His work is a combination of the science and anthropology of fermentation, distillation, and maturation. We have Adam Geissler, the cultural ambassador for Bulleit Bourbon, who grew up in the centrally located town of Lexington, Kentucky, in the heart of bourbon country. And he is now working for Bulleit. You have a very long bio, and I was going to go through the whole thing, but then I know. We have David Kyrejko. He's the founder of Arcane Distilling. He's a distilling industry veteran with over 6 years in the field. He originally got his start designing and fabricating waste reclamation for aquatic ecosystems. He founded Arcane in 2015, which focuses almost exclusively on vacuum distillation and advanced production technologies. Keeping with his core ethos of utilizing every resource possible, he has also developed a number of reclamation technologies specific to the urban craft beer industry. We have Brian Stewart. He's the national ambassador and mixologist for Belvedere Vodka, a longtime member of the Moet Hennessy mixology team and ranked among the top 5 mixologists in Los Angeles, was appointed Belvedere Vodka's national brand ambassador in early 2017. Brian began slinging drinks over 10 years ago, leading in prestigious establishments like Soho House West Hollywood throughout his career.
It's all true.
And then right in the middle, we have Homa Dashtaki, founder of the White Moustache. She accidentally started this yogurt company with her father. After 3 months of business in California, they were asked to shut down or be threatened with a big fine and jail time. The wildly fond of jumpsuits, Ms. Dashtaki fought the law for 2 years to acquire permission to make her traditional family recipe. The law won. Eventually they came to Brooklyn, and you've probably seen their jars of yogurt all over the place. So to kick this off, I wanted everyone to, and I'm sorry, Madi. Please introduce yourself, our late edition.
Hey, I guess I snuck my way onto this panel, but I'm Madi. I'm with Toast Ale. We are making craft beer out of loaves of bread that would otherwise go to waste and pouring all our profits into charities fighting food waste. I'm obsessed with food waste.
Okay, great. So I wanted everyone to kind of talk about their experience with how technology impacts your specific role in the drink industry. A kind of a broad overview of how you feel about technology within your field and where you see its role in what you do.
I'll start this off. I guess the basic, most obvious one that we all see is social media, right? So the whole craft cocktail brewing movement kind of all spawned from this, as we all know. I think that's the obvious one to touch on, right? So it's not going to go anywhere, but I think we can definitely learn to grow from what we're doing and how we can build on that. But just with the internet and how everyone can see what everybody's doing at all the time, that's the biggest thing I think for us, and how we've grown as bartenders and mixologists, if you want to call us from that.
Yeah, I think, technology and bartending, it's kind of almost one of those things where we pride ourselves on knowing classic cocktails and trying to stick along those ways that were set down before us, like the bartenders of the 20s and things like that. The reality is that all those great bartenders, they started a movement and then Prohibition hits and they have to flee to Europe or wherever, they go underground, and this cocktail movement was literally put on pause. And then as the 80s come around, you start to see things that are processed and all these margarita mixes that barely recognize as food kind of finds their way into our drinks. And now there's this huge movement of kind of returning back to what we originally had, which was natural items and things that were fabulous and well made. And technology has surrounded us. So it's really kind of finding ways to take that technology and adapting it to a classic way that was put into place. And at Belvedere, the challenge is we're vodka. And while I think we make a phenomenal vodka that's 100% honest, it's rye and water, that's it. There's no additives, there's no mellowing agents put into it. We still have a category that is very kind of looked down upon as making phenomenal drinks. So we've turned to not only our 600 years of heritage, but also the Lodz Institute, which is a technological and agricultural institute in Poland that specializes in one of their parts. They specialize in the distillation of rye. So we've teamed up with them not only to cultivate our rye through the 8 farmers that we use, but also to kind of grow this category in an innovation that's honest, not 100 million times distilled or artificial flavoring, but we've actually started to look at terroir amongst our rye fields. And this type of technology that they've given to us, we are able to look at pH levels, different chemicals from the same grain of rye that's just planted in different parts of Poland. And that's been a huge advantage to us, particularly in this category and the way that drinks are made.
So we have a yogurt company, and it's antithetical to technology in every way. It is 3 days to make our yogurt from start to finish, and it is entirely not automated and probably never will be. And like the most advanced technology we use is gravity. However, we have this byproduct, which is whey. And in 2014, White Moustache committed to not increasing our volume or taking on more customers until we found a use for all of the whey. And the bartending and community and spirits community has been the most receptive and innovative in this field. And we rely on technology and science to come up with innovative ways to use this byproduct. So we need beer makers to start making a lacto-fermented beer. We need spirit makers to make gin and vodkas with it. We need bartenders to use the whey in interesting cocktails, and to treat yogurt whey kind of how you treat yogurt, and not think of it as a food waste, but to think of it as food and think of it as an innovative ingredient. And even though it's been around for thousands of years, the uses of it are very new and require a lot of science and technology to figure out how to make those spirits and beers, but also the social media that you were talking about to kind of get the word out on what this is, how does it taste, what does work with it, what doesn't work with it. So
hi, I'm Dave. I run Arcane Distilling. We're in Bushwick or East Williamsburg, if you want to be all specific about it. So I'm not just a distiller. I actually build distillation machines and distillation technology. I currently specialize in vacuum distillation and also some advanced maturation techniques. I tend to use words more like multi-purpose distillation photosynthesis reactor as opposed to, copper pot still. So I guess if you want to talk about how I use technology in my field, I kind of am technology in my field. So I tend to look outside of the craft distillation industry, and I always have. And try to see what's been going on in the laboratory field, in the medical field. I know this is probably a bad word here, but even the petrochemical field. But I mean, you've got to look at the advances in those fields that have dramatically overtaken what was sort of the art back in the 1800s. And if you can incorporate the actual technology, which is the application of science to a field, not just simply talking about things. If you can apply that to something like making spirits, a whole wealth of new possibilities opens up. Especially when you're talking about waste reclamation, energy efficiency. It's something that I wholeheartedly focus on in the making of my machines and in my products. So, yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, I'm Matt from Matchbook Distilling. I'm also a distiller. So for me, the biggest impact that technology has on the way on my life, the way I do things, is really the availability of information. I always want to know more and want to know why and how. So I'd be pretty lost without the internet and my ability and just the availability of scientific research. If I've got a question about how certain species of lactobacillus could impact a fermentation, I can usually find that on my cell phone, or I have a digital text, or I know where to get that information. And the information itself might not be that new, but the accessibility of it is really, really useful. And also just the precision control that technology gives me. Just the amount of control I can have over the different fermentation temperatures at different times of fermentation, or the ability to see what's going on in my fermentation, and and all that. That's really the big impact that technology has on me. Because I take a slightly different tack than Dave. That I often look backwards for inspiration. Fermentation is basically mankind's oldest technology. It predates agriculture. It predates most of our tools. So there's this massive wealth, and I'm not just talking alcoholic fermentation. Every culture in human history that I am aware of has used fermentation in some form or another. So there's this tremendous wealth of knowledge, and being able to use technology to figure out, all right, why were they doing it this way? Was there a good reason? And how can I apply that to what I'm doing? And so really hoping to use technology to further my understanding of historical practices from around the world.
Yeah, similar to White Moustache, on the surface, taking loaves of bread and turning it into beer doesn't seem to be a very tech-heavy process. And in fact, our inspiration comes from the way that beer was originally invented 4,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia as a solution to save every valuable crumb. And at the time, they couldn't afford to let those calories go to waste, so they realized that fermenting it essentially turned it into what has become beer. And ironically, we now 4,000 years later are doing the exact same thing, but for the opposite purpose. It's because we have far too much bread. And so in some ways, technology, I would say, has almost caused the need for this as a solution. Overproduction of all food, but particularly bread, has really only become the norm in the last 50, 60 years. And so, yeah, technology has almost made it necessary to do something, but at the same time, the ability to just ferment it and prolong its shelf life and then put it in a can is a way that I guess we are leveraging technology to extend the shelf life of something.
I wanted to go back to David and have you describe in more detail vacuum distilling, the technique that you use, and kind of give everyone an overview of exactly what that is and what it does.
Sure. First of all, I didn't invent vacuum distillation. Vacuum distillation is a pretty common tool used extensively in a number of industries. Essentially what you're doing is lowering the pressure below ambient of a liquid, which lowers its boiling point dramatically. So what you're able to do is to preserve a lot of chemicals that would have broken down or been degraded during a typical hot distillation process. So instead of distilling my spirits at about 210 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm distilling them around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So a nice warm day. So imagine you're drinking like a really nice IPA, and it's got all that wonderful aroma. You can smell the esters created by the yeast during fermentation. If you were to throw that into your copper pot still, you're going to get out something that tastes kind of like cooked salad. But if you run it through vacuum still, all those chemicals are preserved. So vacuum stills are exceedingly complicated. They're very expensive, especially ones that are required to have such precision that you can use delicate chemicals like beer in. But it's really the only way to experience the sort of full bouquet of delicate substances like beer. So hopefully that works.
Brian, I wanted to ask you about, vodka doesn't have the greatest reputation, so you mentioned like finding new ryes with different terroirs and that sort of thing. So how does Belvedere or other vodka brands that you know of balance the agricultural aspect and the technological aspect, and which kind of gets to the fore, do you think?
Well, I say that as kind of like, I came up in bartending in 2002, and it was like the first cool thing to do was to hate vodka. But I can't find that to be further from the truth, because we all use whiskeys and gins, and you put them into a cocktail, and it's very, those elements, the botanicals, the wood, they come through quite easily. And to find, I truly enjoy, not just because I work for Belvedere, but truly sitting down with a bartender who can present to me a vodka cocktail, particularly, let's say, Belvedere, and they give me a cocktail, and not only can I taste the nuances of the flavors that they put in, but I can also taste the vanilla up front from our rye and the star anise from our rye. and the black pepper from our rye. We distill with rye because of the qualities that it possesses. You know, there's lots of great things to distill with, but we find that it gives us the best flavor forward. And then through our technology of Belvedere and trying to improve the overall thing of the category and to put this back into bartenders' hands and go, holy, this is awesome stuff, we looked to cultivating a rye that is known as Dashtaki Diamond Rye, which is a baker's grade rye. It yields less, so we have to use more of it to produce what we're looking for. And we were doing that with a particular bottle called Unfiltered. And we found such great results from this, and we said, well, how do we move forward? How do we innovate from this? And we went to the Lowe's Institute, and we simply looked at different climates throughout Poland. And one would think that Poland is just cold all the way through. But the reality is that where we're distilling one of our new single estate ryes is in a place called Barcziszek, which has these very long, harsh, cold winters. And then 310 miles to the west, we're distilling the exact same rye, we're growing and distilling the exact same rye in a place called Smagori, which is in a forest, and it has very mild winters and longer springs and summers. We removed all the variables except for where the rye was grown, and we came out with phenomenal different results, where the Lake Barcziszek has this rolling grass, almost moss menthol to it, where our Smagori forest has this salted caramel and just these kind of more bold flavors. And we're finding that this particular vodka, particularly our Smagori, can stand up to things like sweet vermouths and bitters and almost play with whiskey-style drinks. It makes phenomenal old fashions. I'm not saying that vodka should replace whiskey. That's ridiculous. But I mean, it's a good place to start in saying, look, vodka can find its way through innovation. Vodka has flavor. It's important, just with every other single back bottle, every other bar that you have on your back bar, we know those ingredients. We know what they taste like. It's important to understand what your vodka tastes like, because it'll change your end result. And it's really exciting for me personally to be working for Belvedere right now, and they're taking this step forward in terroir.
I would pose the same question to you regarding bourbon. How does Bulleit balance the agricultural and the technological?
Definitely. Great question. For Bulleit, we have a new distillery that we opened in Shelbyville, Kentucky this year in March, and we are a rye-heavy bourbon, right? So bourbon has to be majority corn, and all of the corn that we use comes from the county where the distillery is. It all comes from Shelby County. There is not any rye grown in Kentucky, at least not in the amount that we need to use. So most of our rye actually currently comes from Scandinavia. But we use as much as we can locally, is the big thing with us and Bulleit.
Cool.
Well, yeah, just to touch on that point, I mean, with Poland, we have a lot of rye. It's one of the biggest imports. And a lot of times vodka companies don't talk about this, but we don't distill our first liquid. Our first liquid comes from our farmers. And I think that's kind of a common practice through a lot of vodkas. And people don't like to talk about it because they're getting it from a lot of different places. But we work with 8 farmers directly. We know their names, we know their families. We've been working with them for a very long time. And we rely on their know-how of the distillation of the first liquid. And then the Lowe's Institute comes in and they help us with the technology of rectifying it through 3 more steps of distillation.
Homa, I wanted to ask you what surprising ways you've seen your way being used by people in the spirits and beer world.
Well, I think some of the more interesting cocktails have come out of like Blue Hill, who makes it our way with a beer syrup, which is the byproduct of making beer as well, and that's resulted in a very tasty cocktail. This summer we launched a line of popsicles that was geared towards children. However, the bartenders in Spirit World got a hold of our popsicles and have made some really awesome cocktails using them as well. So our popsicles are way, and fruit byproduct, like our sour cherry popsicles are the way, and the syrup from our sour cherry juices. And people have put them in like Prosecco glasses and in a gin and tonic, our cucumber one. And so like I feel very good about just making yogurt in a really good way and then handing it over to experts and non-experts and home cooks to just have their way with it. But I just make yogurt. I make one thing, but it's, yeah.
I know that Matchbook and Toast both have their own food waste initiatives. Would you both like to talk about what obviously Toast is all about food waste. But can you give a bit more about the philosophy behind that and exactly what goes into cutting food waste in what you make?
Yeah, so we are kind of tackling the single most wasted food item by any category. It is bread. I'm sure everyone in this room is all too familiar with the statistic that 40 to 50% of edible food goes to waste, which is, nothing short of unacceptable. And in the food recovery space, valuable, high nutrient foods, fruits and vegetables, it's very obvious where those should be going. Those should be going to food redistribution programs and soup kitchens to feed those who need that valuable food. The thing with bread is that it is overproduced so much that even those programs, soup kitchens, turn it away in massive quantities. So to date, there hasn't really been a scalable way to keep surplus bread in the food chain. So we're really all about thinking about, wow, a loaf of bread takes 9 months to go from seed to loaf and all of the associated land, labor, fuel, love. So that's kind of the first side of our primary input, of course, being surplus bread. And then I think equally important to our mission is that we are a social enterprise, so 100% of our profits are poured into charities tackling the more root causes, systemic, policy level causes of food waste. So really trying to tackle it both physically, but also creating revenues for the groups getting at the deeper causes of the problem.
Matthew?
So, as a contractor, so we have a lot of different types of waste stream that we've got to deal with. That depending on what type of product we're making, our waste streams can be very different. So, try and have different game plans for each one. But the commonality between all that is basically we're interested in the carbohydrates in our substrate, whether it's the sugar from a fruit or the sugar from molasses, or taking the starch from grains and converting that to sugars, which we then ferment. What we have left over generally has a lot of protein, a lot of fiber, and it's also got a lot of nutrients from the DG cells. So it's got fatty acids, it's got oil. So it's very nutrient rich, but not in a way that we can make alcohol out of. So there's a lot of different options for using that. It can be used as animal feed for cattle or pigs. Makes a great fertilizer, and there are options to use it as a substrate for growing mushrooms, and you can also use it to create biofuel. There's a lot of different options, but what we're really trying to prevent is just look at any way that we're not just sending it down, which is the easiest thing, is just sending it down the sewer. We can do it, it's very easy. What we're trying to do is look at each individual substrate and say, all right, what are the characteristics of this? Okay, this one is particularly high. This is high in protein. Can we use this as an animal feed? This one's got good characteristics. This will make great compost. Let's find a local farmer who wants to put this on their farm, and just any way that we can avoid just sending it to down the sewer.
Great. David, I also wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned what you thought would be a problematic note, that you might look to the petrochemical field for inspiration in your work. What do you draw on from that field or from other fields that might seem totally foreign to creating spirits?
So when you think of distillation, you have the marketing side of distillation. You have the idea that's put out by the different companies of like this old-timey, doing it right, doing it classically, knowing your farmers, growing your stuff. But the truth is it's chemistry. And if you understand the hundreds of years of progression of technology, actual technology, you realize that the line between technology and marketing are worlds apart. You have this one perspective that is this, I always like this image. Right now, handmade is very cool, very popular. And I love the idea of like the distiller choking the shit out of a potato, trying to squeeze vodka out of a potato, And it's like, the truth is, your distiller doesn't make your products, your machines make your products. the distiller understands the machines, hopefully, and makes the products that way. And if they don't understand it, if they don't have the knowledge, all the passion in the world isn't going to matter worth a damn. So my inspiration in the petrochemical industry is if you produce a batch of toluene and you get a little bit of xylene in your toluene, you get fired. You don't call it the distiller's reserve. You don't call it the small batch. It's not extra artisanal and extra handmade. You just get fucking fired. And so if you can take that level of precision and apply that to making a whiskey, making a vodka, making a gin, and using the tools that are available in that field, like gas chromatographs, as opposed to just tasting panels. My inspiration is to try to make my products and the standards that be met in something like the petrochemical industry or the medical industry, but always to have an idea towards flavor. So the last test is always what it tastes like, but you just can't rely on bullshit. You can't just try to wheedle your way and slap handmade on the label, because they can't do that.
Great, so I wanted to open it up to the audience if you have any questions for our panelists. Lauren will come around with a microphone.
If not, you all can keep talking, but if there is a question. Yeah.
Hi, easy question. Can the panel talk about how you saved money through technology, or the other way around, how it costs more money? I see Arcane. Thank you.
Shit, I guess I'm a little too emotive. Technology will always initially cost more, but on the long run, if it's well designed and if you understand what you're getting into, it should save money. One of the things that I build into my machines is dramatically less energy usage. Vacuum stills use amazingly less energy and amazingly less resources than do traditional stills. And the initial purchase price is exponentially more. It's a matter of finding that balance between extra fuel burn, because you actually have to consider that when you're drinking spirits, you're drinking processed fuel. So somebody burned gas in a boiler to make steam to process your grain into spirits. So how much fuel was used to make your bottle of whiskey? How much fuel was used to move that from the distillery to where you are buying it from? So that's constantly in the forefront of my mind when looking at new technologies to utilize, is just how much energy am I saving? How much resources will be required if I don't use this technology? So it's always important. And I'm done.
Played off, but does anyone else have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So there's always gonna, as a distiller, there's always gonna be a way that you can stretch more yield for the same amount of dollars. But it comes down to the fact of, are you doing that at the expense of the quality of your product? You know, I could easily save money if I shortened my fermentations or used a more efficient yeast, or didn't have lactic acid bacteria in some of my fermentations that is processing my fermentable sugars into something other than ethanol. I can run my stills harder and faster. I can use less reflux. And Dave was talking about energy consumption. If I get less reflux, I also have less energy usage. So there's always a way that you can probably find to reduce the costs of your product. I can find cheaper grain, but we like to source it from local farmers. There's always that, but you have to balance it with the actual quality of your product. And there's space in the market for both approaches. There are people who are much more cost conscious than others, and if you try to do all of it, then that's where you really get lost. You really need to find out what your comfortable balance is between, spending X amount on production and really trying to go for quality of the product.
Do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, Just in terms of like the cost effectiveness of technology, to me, like when I think of technology, because I am sitting there squeezing the potato with the hand, basically. I think it's right. I'm making alcohol. But I think of it in the course of my business as like a mentality. Like I know there is a solution to this whey byproduct because I hear guys like David talking about gastrometers and whiz poppers and whatever. Like I know that if I like were to hand him like 5 gallons of whey, sure, whatever. And like I just think of it as a mentality, and even though it curbs my business currently, like in the long term, like not only is it going to be innovative and hopefully profitable for White Moustache, but like in 2015, 100 million gallons of whey was tossed away. Like that could be alcohol for all of us. You know? So I'm not going to do it like this technology is, and that's going to be awesome.
Actually, if I could jump on that real quickly, one of the whey is a huge one because it is such a readily available source of carbohydrates. But right now, the way that it's utilized is that it's very energy intensive because instead of using GMO yeasts, what we're doing is we're heating the shit out of it to break it into simple sugars. But there is amazing biotech on, like, right on the cusp of being able to take things like xylose or inulin, or these are all long chain complex carbohydrates, and very, very easily turn them into usable things like alcohol. It's just the technology has been somewhat demonized, and for that reason isn't really accepted, which is, it's a fucking shame. But yeah, I'm hoping that technology, especially for things like this, will become more accepted. Sorry.
I just have a question actually. Do you guys have a reaction to that being in a more traditional spirit previously?
Yeah, definitely. So Bulleit is, if you look at the massive bourbon industry and all the big players in that, Bulleit is actually one of the younger ones that has grown very rapidly. So we just got our first very large distillery built this year in March, and like it was mentioned, there is a big gap between marketing and distillation, right? This new still is completely animated, right? It is run by a computer. Automated, sorry. And, you know, with that, there comes the topic of, you know, how is technology and tradition play a part in that, right? And it's huge. Luckily for us, we've been able to take advantage of solar panels that help cut down on emissions. We've been able to take advantage of scrubbers that help keep the air cleaner from it. You know, so we do the part in this new still to kind of keep this as clean as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where we don't want to, I mean, we are looked at as one of the big guys. We distill twice a year. We reduced our carbon emissions in 2012 to 2017 by 49%. And a big part of that was taking an Olympic still from Hennessy and putting it into our distillery so that we can macerate our flavors as opposed to distilling in Poland to keep true with our appellation, sending it to France and then coming back, which was silly. But you know, it's technology it's definitely welcome, and I think it's going to do great things for this industry. I think the alcohol industry technology has always kind of been accidental. I mean, if you look at alcohol, it was thought to be medicine. I mean, when you didn't know a lot about it, I drink this, it makes me feel better, it must be good for me. I think fermentation was kind of the same way. I think somebody was making bread, and they got some water in there and it accidentally fermented, and you know, someone was like, oh, this has sayability. Technology will continue to change us, and we will welcome technology to help us keep the environment clean and to reduce our emissions and to continue to kind of keep up the state, just making sure that things are working in the correct ways to make sure that we're providing things for the earth so that the earth can provide things for us. While distillation is definitely the science, the farmers who make our rye is not necessarily the marketing. It's what makes the alcohol.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if I even need this. The question that I have for you is, I'm in the process of building out a new facility in Connecticut, and we're looking to see how we can put in companies that can use waste heat or either generate waste heat for other businesses. what kind of pairings would you see would be applicable to distilling either spirits or beer?
Like I said before, about one of the unique things about vacuum technology is that it uses very little energy to create a significant amount of product. And right now, I'm paired up with a brewery, a large brewery in Bushwick called Interborough. And we have a symbiotic relationship. I wind up using a lot of their waste product actually to make my products. I'm able to use a lot of their waste energy and waste streams to make my products. There's a natural sort of symbiosis there, obviously, because all distilled spirits start off with beer, actually. But when it comes down to the utilization of waste heat, that's a really tricky subject. The engineering there is very, very fine. And it's also just as much about how do you design better cooling systems as creating waste heat reclamation facilities. This is a very long discussion. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Do we have other audience questions?
Hello. So marketing questions to millennial versus Generation Z. So, as a marketer myself and a lot of the spirits brands, Adam and Brian, been focusing on targeting millennials, and there's 80 million of them. But the rumor is that the new generation, Z, is coming up, and they are even more tech savvy. So my question to you, to Adam and Brian, so are you ready? Or are you still keeping up with millennials?
I mean, this is the $1 million question. I mean, this is something where it comes up in discussions all the time. But the reality is that this is a tech-driven question in the sense that, I mean, my wife works on social media for sports all the time, and the statistics are that people get their news in the first 60 seconds of their day on their phone. They're not opening a newspaper anymore, and the marketing to people, you cannot put out this long-winded story, this marketing thing. It has to be direct, it has to be to the point, and you have to have truth behind it. So in order to target these new audiences, the millennials and generation, I'm getting old, Z, okay, Generation Z, God help us. It comes down to Instagram, it comes down to Snapchat, it comes down to these influencers, and I think the consumer has become incredibly intelligent, and to get BS past them is no longer possible. People sit down at bars and they are armed with information, and if you lie, they're going to know very quickly. So I think the true answer is make it short, make it concise, and make it truthful.
I would like to disagree with some of that. I think
I'll second that.
I think that most of the information provided by brands is BS in most cases. And
which brands in particular?
I'm not naming names, but there is.
It's a trend. I wouldn't say one particular brand.
Yeah, it is very much, and it is very easy to fool consumers, unfortunately. And it's much harder for brands that try to be honest, because there is a lot of pseudoscience that gets put out there in every aspect of the beverage industry. I think that, unfortunately, the vast majority of consumers are not scientifically literate, so they can be quite easily misled by marketing.
But I think that's why all these people are here today, because they want to know more. I think everyone had an opinion about food 10 years ago. And when they sat down at a bar, they were incredibly intimidated by these scientific words that have been set up here today. But now, with the internet and home distilling, I think the information is there and they know more about it. So I think there is an amount of truth that they can chew on, and maybe some of the BS can pass over. And yes, you can be fooled, but I think everyone now is raising an eyebrow to a lot of this. And I think to get in front of it as this Generation Z comes up is to get on this train of being honest, because people will see past it very quickly. So yes, I'd say yes, now people can be fooled easily, but in the next 5 years, I think it'll be very hard.
I'm gonna have to say that there's become this systematic sort of indoctrination of these younger generations to bullshit. And then they begin to believe it. And between the native advertising that you see, the paid sponsorships that you see, hey, Essential Water, like between all of this stuff, it's not so much that they can even recognize the bullshit because it becomes ingrained in what their friends have said, what they've heard. The urban legend now has grown teeth, and it's going to be very hard to save them from it.
I think being in the middle of this, I'm not quite as libertarian as
Angry Scientific, actually.
all right. But I do agree with you that the customer today is very smart. But I also feel a lot of pressure as a producer to put gimmicks or labeling on my product. Like, am I non-GMO? Am I organic? Is it 100% grass-fed? And it's like, I might not, like, do I check all the boxes? How many billions of probiotics are there? What's the nutritional packs? I'm like, it is always different. And like, how does the whey affect one person or another? Maybe it doesn't work with your constitution, but maybe it works really well with yours. And it's like, I just refuse. And by refusing, I'm not playing the game right. And I feel the pressure that like a lot of other companies, like, you know, they do want that quick sound bite. And there has to be like some truth behind it. But I feel like it's a lot of pressure to put on the smaller brands, especially when you're not like mass producing. But hopefully Generation Z is as intelligent, if not more so, than the producers, and they can, you know, check everybody and hold us accountable.
It's profoundly not cool to be scientifically literate these days. It's something that it doesn't seem to have the appeal initially. It's something that I've taken to my brand. Like, I don't say artisanal, I don't say handmade, I don't say craft in anything that I do. And I've seen good response to that, but it would be so much easier for me to say handmade, handcrafted, artisanal in Brooklyn. It's so much easier. Anyway.
We have a last question right here.
I don't know exactly how to ask it, but like, is there a middle ground between like the big guys and the little guys? Because like, can the little guys be something else besides selling out and being big? You know what I mean? Like it seems like in America there's like this giant like Starbucks, or then there are these small little things.
I mean, by all means.
I mean, it becomes more than just a question of scale. The logistics necessary to support a large brand are very different than the logistics of a small guy. So yes, you can grow and be independently large, and there's plenty of examples while holding true to your own brand. There are examples of both. It really has to do with not trying to immediately, massively increase your scale without having planned for those logistics. You need to make sure that if you want to do it, I don't want to say it in the right way, but if you want to maintain that brand identity that you built as a small guy, when you scale up, you really need to make sure that you're doing a lot of trials. Is my product and my process staying the same as I shift to bigger equipment? It's a lot more efficient on a large scale. If I leave from direct firing my stills to steam jackets or steam coils, that's going to have an impact on my product though. How am I going to adjust for this? How am I going to adjust my marketing and my distribution and make sure that if I go into a new territory, how am I going to make sure that the people who are selling my product there are actually representing it the way that I'm comfortable with and aren't just trying to get quick sales by hitting some buzzwords and are actually being honest about what we're making and how we're making it and taking the time to really educate people and keeping that brand identity that was so carefully built as a small guy.
At the same time, I think it's not really fair to be saying sell out. I think that smaller producers have a lot to learn from the larger producers. A lot of the advanced technologies that I'm talking about are already used by the major producers. And now in some ways they don't feel comfortable talking about them because again, there's this sort of culture of technology being profoundly uncool. But I really wish that that was different. I mean, already most of the brands that you're enjoying aren't made by the people that they say make them. Like most of your whiskeys are made by 4 major places. That's the way it works. And if people were just more honest about it, it's like, you know what? We chose this because we like it. We put it in a bottle because this is our personal taste. We didn't make it, however. I don't understand what's wrong with that. So instead of trying to deceive the consumer, and so then you perceive this as like the sellout. Oh, we went big and we got bought. They were already doing that. They've always been bought. It's just now they're being perceived differently, and I think that's not really fair. I think that the big guys, quote unquote, and the little guys should be much more open about their already existing relationship.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more in the sense and the fact that we mentioned the word honest like 3 times, and the fact that we are not, you know, like I said, Belvedere is viewed as this huge, giant monster. We're actually a pretty small production in the scheme of other vodkas, and we haven't found ourselves in a Supreme Court battling over handcrafted labels. We haven't found ourselves in any.
Tito in the back somewhere?
I don't know what that's referred to, but we haven't found ourselves playing into these things. We do not have gluten-free on our label. We are 100% gluten-free. I think when you become a big brand, you have a responsibility to stay true to your roots and true to your science, to continue to present a phenomenal, great product. And I think, you know, speaking to you honestly, I think one thing we can all agree on is that it needs to be more truthful, it needs to be more honest, and Belvedere has missed a lot of opportunities because we haven't played that game, and that's probably why we are number 6 in the world and not number 1, because we stay true to our heritage. We have an appellation around us that the government makes us stand true to. We can't bend the rules, and so I think being honest again is when you're a small brand and you have the ability to become a big brand, probably like Bulleit. It's incredibly important to stay honest.
Would you like to comment on that? Because yogurt is quite a crowded and diverse field. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm also in a different range than these guys, so I think the conversation changes when you're talking about something like yogurt. And I've been in a very fortunate position that, like I said, I curbed my own supply. We have a wait list of 19 stores that want yogurt, and we've obnoxiously just held still at the 35 stores we sell at, and I self-distribute. I'm trying to set my own terms on like food distribution. I am really lucky that I live in like the village of New York City that can help support that and is tolerant of that. And stores like Murray's Cheese, who will like be okay with being short like 20% of their order and still carry me the next week. And we just opened a store in Los Angeles. We launched with Italy LA, and I knew that like if we ever grow, it's going to be in like, I made a batch of yogurt yesterday and came out here today for this. We will make yogurt in the same facility that we sell it in. And right there, we're only making like 200 jars per batch. And the idea is if we're growing, we're making more and more small batches and keeping to our like traditional techniques and growing on our own terms. And I would like to be a model for a company that can remain small. Like, how much do you really need? Like, I do not need to be providing yogurt to Idaho, and I'll probably be on a panel in 5 years and be like, I make the best yogurt in Idaho. But I mean, I love Idaho, but I don't need to be making yogurt for the whole country is my point. And so wherever there are opportunities like what happened in Los Angeles, we are very happy to take them. But like we've stayed relatively small here in New York.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you all for being here.